Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have Kevin Allen on board, and we're going to talk a number of things, about some games from last night and other league issues. I want to start with, I saw online on Twitter this morning that it's, quote, Pi Day, since it's March 14th, 314, the mathematical equation pi. They have to come up with something for every day. I never heard of this until like a year ago, and I think it's a promotion for companies that make pies. But I just figured it's like, okay, what is your favorite pie? Because I think everybody has one. And I don't think anybody out there doesn't have a particular pie that they don't like. Peter, you first.
Yeah, here we go. This is my wife's late grandmother from Grandmother's Pie, she was from Oklahoma. She had a huge southern drawl.
Okay.
And Nana's pecan pie was insane. And luckily my wife's sister sort of carried the torch on that. Mm-hmm. That hands down my favorite pie.
Pecan pie is very good. My mom makes it, and I think it almost puts me on the border of diabetic coma when she makes it.
Yeah, it can border over. It can be overly sweet. It depends.
Yeah, and you use Caro syrup or corn syrup or whatever. Yeah, it's just But Kevin, what about you?
Oh man, that is a layered question. I'm a pie guy, although I've sort of heard people suggest that pies are on the endangered species list, that it's kind of gone the way, when I was growing up in the 60s, like you had pie at least once a week. Yeah. Like that was just a staple. Your mom or your grandmother, somebody would bake a pie and just would appear on your table at some point once a week. And, now because of the health, issues, we're also health conscious, that cakes and pies, if you used to go in your grocery store, there used to be an entire row of cake mixes, and now it's just a little corner because people are doing the same thing with pies. Like people don't eat as many pies as they did before. So
I ate chocolate pudding pie last night.
That's why I say it's a layered answer. In the traditional pie sense, I'm a cherry pie guy. I mean, I like cherry pie.
Cherry pie is great.
Now, I will eat pretty much any pie you put in front of me, but that is problematic. That is problematic. Yes. So I like cherry pies. But if you start to get into the cream and the variety pies, then I'm a chocolate French silk pie guy. I'm a banana cream pie guy.
Key lime. I like key lime a lot.
Yeah, key lime. I like all those. I mean, it's, running joke with my family when I was a kid is I used to say, we're Allens, we deserve pie. So whenever we'd go out for dinner, my kids would always say, we're Allens, Dad, we deserve pie.
Okay, Ross, what about you?
Ultimately my favorite probably is apple pie, just the basic, simple apple pie, no raisins, put a thing of whipped cream on it, no Cool Whip. Real whipped cream on it, and I'm good. You heat it up, put a little ice cream if you want to get crazy, and that's really hard to beat. The apples and the ice cream, when you heat it up, there's like this chemical reaction that it's impossible not to like it. It just is.
I love a good apple pie. And the funny thing is what Kevin said, it should be more easy. It's easier to make a pie now. I mean, my mom used to make pie crust by scratch, and and that was a laborious process. But now you've got these pre-made pie shells that are in the supermarket, and they're not great, but they're okay. You can. It's a lot easier to make a pie, but I think you're right, because people are because diabetes is prevalent, and people are shying away from sweets. They don't make them as much. I love apple pie. Calm yourself, Russ. I like pumpkin pie, but only like during like Halloween and Thanksgiving, the fall season. I love lemon pie, but I hate lemon meringue. I hate the meringue. I really hate it. I hate the taste and the consistency.
Really, you don't like lemon meringue?
I like lemon pie with like whipped cream on top, or lemon chiffon pie, not lemon meringue pie. The meringue does something to me. I just don't like it.
And the meringue's actually lower fat than a lot of other.
It's whipped egg whites.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to even consider that someone could work up a hate for meringue. I mean, it's so like it barely exists. You know,
Yeah,
I won't eat
I'm
blueberry
peculiar.
pie.
What can I say?
Like I won't eat blueberry pie. I'll just give it back to you. Like I wouldn't eat that.
Yeah, I mean, but I like the cream pies though. Banana cream, coconut cream.
I just can't come up with a pie that I wouldn't eat. You know, maybe my grandmother used to make mincemeat pie.
Yeah, I was gonna say
about 150 years ago, but I remember it, but just vaguely. I'm not sure I would eat that, but and I have had sweet potato pie.
Yeah.
Which
even
just,
I'll eat a sweet potato pie occasionally.
That just reminds me basically of pumpkin pie.
Yeah, it's very similar to pumpkin pie. I have never had peach cobbler, but I would try it.
You've never had a peach cobbler?
I've never had peach cobbler. No.
Wow.
I'll tell you, if you want the best of the peach cobblers, you got to go to Amish country. Like
okay,
yeah,
Amish country, you need a peach cobbler or even an apple cobbler. Like it is a very distinctive flavor.
What's the difference between a cobbler and a pie? Like what?
Well, the top
where's
is like
our divided?
Top down. It's like a convertible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just one other thing, and then we'll start the show. It came out yesterday. I think it was Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic mentioned some of these changes that are going on in baseball that for people like me who have followed baseball since I was, less than 10 years old. I mean, I'm really irked by, changing the DL to the IL now. And it's it's the injured list rather than the disabled list. But now they're changing the trade deadline. You had the waiver and the non-waiver trade deadline. You had July 31st and August 31st. And now they're eliminating the August 31st deadline and having one deadline, and it's going to be staying in July 31st. And I thought, Russ, what you said is, and it makes a lot of sense. There are teams are going to have to make moves with about 50, 55 games left in the regular season.
It's almost going to be directly after the All-Star game. It's crazy.
Yeah, it should. I mean, if they're gonna mold both of them together, then they should put the date at say August 15th.
August 15th is a perfect date.
Yeah. Instead, now teams are really going to have to make a decision on whether they're dumping or not, whether they're whether they have issues that they need to address or they can address them internally. And honestly, it's like if you have an injury on August 2nd. You're screwed in baseball. If it's if you lose a starting pitcher, at least there would be starting pitchers in the current system where they clear waivers because of salary or something like that. You can go out and pick up that guy. Now you can't. So I think this is stupid.
I'll give you one more that I like, one more I don't like. I do like the $1 million bonus for the home run derby. That makes sense, especially to get young players in there because a young player could use $1 million. Clearly, a guy who's making $15 million a year probably doesn't care. But a young player would do it. So I think that would keep that going. The thing that I don't like is the 3-batter minimum, and I'll tell you why. Not because it's going to put, Jerry Blevins out of work because he's a 1-batter lefty, sometimes 2. What I think it's going to do is move forward the trend of starting games with relievers because if you've got 3 good starters, why am I going to have a guy in the bullpen if he's literally going to pitch once a week 3 batters? I might as well use them at the beginning of a game when I know that but my last 2 starters aren't that good and use a couple of those guys and then put someone in for 4 or 5 innings to bridge the gap. And I hate that, and I think more of it's going to happen now.
I just saw a great article, the best analysis of the whole relief pitcher problem that we have in baseball. And he basically proves statistically that getting rid of the 1-batter reliever is not going to alter the issue in baseball, which is the constant change of relievers. He actually had stats in there. You know how long it takes to change a pitcher during an inning? This surprised me.
3 minutes.
What, pardon me?
3 minutes.
Yeah, it is. It's 3 minutes and change. It's
just a guess.
Yeah, 3:25. Wow. I thought it would have been closer to 5 or 6 minutes.
Right.
It's like an eternity when you're trying to watch it and they change pitchers 4 times. But basically his suggestion was if we really want to alter the issue, which is that it's hard to watch a baseball game now from the 6th inning on because they're constantly changing pitchers, and you kind of lose attention, especially young people who don't seem to have the same attention span that older folks have. He just basically said we got to go down to 10 pitcher limit on your roster, 25-man rosters, but you can only have 10 pitchers, and that will force everyone to stay longer with pitchers. And
right now they're capping them at 13. From what I understand, they're expanding the roster to 26 players,
right?
But they're capping it at 13 pitchers.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess if you want to eliminate the specialist, that's fine.
Yeah, the specialist is going to be gone. I'm telling you, I think the specialist now is going to move to the beginning of the game. I really do. I think it'll be the setup and the closer, and now you're going to have that beginning guy with more teams. I fear that.
Well, and he brought up one. He would go to 25-man roster, 10 pitcher limit, but just like in hockey days, you'd have an emergency pitcher that could be in the stands.
I like that.
Yeah, and you basically bring a guy, and he doesn't dress, he's not there, but if he gets in one of those games, it gets out of hand, you can bring in the emergency pitcher to come in and play. And I think that would actually help. I mean, it would be fun to see starters stretch out their arms a little bit. Wouldn't you like to see them go longer than 5 innings plus?
Well, Russ, I'm gonna apply for the emergency pitcher in Toronto. I'm a lefty and I throw a good screwball.
You are a good screwball. There's no question. Nobody would argue that.
There you go. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, March 14th, 2019.
I'm Peter Tessier in balmy Winnipeg because it's warm out.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Spring has sprung. It's like 61, 62 and sunny.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today in Michigan. Right now, it's sleeting.
Oh, you poor guy.
Yeah.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I'm freezing my butt off, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we'll start with the games from yesterday because, Kevin, over the last couple of days, Eck has regaled us with the thought that the Edmonton Oilers were still mathematically in it, and
he's not here to defend himself.
That died. I'll send him the link to this. That died a quick death last night when they lost 6-3 at the hands of the New Jersey Devils, which is basically the Albany Devils or Binghamton Devils. I mean, there's not many NHL players because of injury on that roster. And I checked in and out of this game, and even Eck last night in our mutual text said, I didn't know that the Oilers were this bad. And I'm like, you haven't been listening to us.
Right.
They are this bad.
Well, to me, the big story of last night is I woke up this morning and the Arizona Coyotes and Carolina Hurricanes are both in playoff spots.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, good gosh, when was the last time that happened?
That's a long time.
Yeah. They're both in playoff spots, and boy, it would be dynamic for all of them. Like if they could ever get the Oilers, the Hurricanes, and the Coyotes in the playoffs at the same time, boy, that would really be a story. But
I do want to go back to Edmonton just for a sec, though, because the buildup on that game was, well, look at you've got Connor McDavid. He's going to get 100 points. You got Leon Draisaitl. He's going to get 50 goals. Yeah, that's great. But that's not a hockey team. And it's proven in this era, it's not enough. And they don't even have a good enough offense to outscore teams. And Koskinen in net is not going to be a stalwart or a stopgap to get you to the playoffs either. I think they're going to find that out too. This team, I don't want to say they're in trouble, but I'm telling you, they took 2 steps back. And now this team is really at a point where you can't tear it down anymore because they already were torn down.
Right.
You really look at it and say, all right, we've got to make some more trades. We've got to make some more improvements. We have to bring up guys and keep them up here like Yamamoto and guys like that for next year. Because Bakersfield's doing great. So to me, they're going to have more of Bakersfield in Edmonton and less of Edmonton on the NHL roster.
Well, go ahead, Peter.
If fixing the Oilers was going to be easy, it would have been done by now. And I think and Russ, it's not that you're wrong.
Oh no, I know.
Right. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is that there have been so many attempts to fix this team and it's been getting it wrong each time. And if you're Keith Gret, or well, who knows who if you're Bob Nicholson, figure who your GM is first.
Right.
First, the GM needs to convince you that they have a plan and the timelines they believe it to be in place. And if Bob Nicholson, if that doesn't fit within what Bob Nicholson via Daryl Cates wants, you should fold the franchise, because anything that comes from the top of this organization is basically it's putrid. And you have to hear something from the outside, because your way of doing something doesn't work. And to get to where I'm going with this, to Russ's point, is that this isn't just about bringing up some of Bakersfield. This is about having a development process that works in the Oilers organization at the NHL level, that supports players, that helps these young guys in all capacities of what being a professional is, and gives them training, resources, video, tutorial, diet, everything. You've got to strip down everything away from what Hitchcock and the GM are doing from player management and things, because you clearly can't figure out a way to get out of the mess you're in. Well, so to bring it up is to do what Russ says, but you can't feed these guys to the wolves anymore like they've been fed for 10 years.
Yeah, that's why you need Ron Hextall. Ron Hextall would be able to do that for them.
But to go along with this, and I want to get Kevin's input on this. I mean, really, because I've heard a lot of talk about Edmonton looking at what the Leafs did over the last few years and sort of mimicking that. That would take a lot of financial investment from Daryl Cates to either buy out or bury players. I mean, half of the job of the new GM is to dig them out of what Peter Chiarelli did over the last few years, finding a way to either trade or bury Milan Lucic's contract, Chris Russell's contract. There are players there that simply are barely NHLers, and if there are NHLers, they're somebody who should be making $650,000 a year and not making $6 million. And whether they can do that or not, whether they can develop their own version of Robidas Island, I don't know. But I mean, Kev, that's the only way I see them being able to shed some of those players, bring up some of their young guys, develop and be more streamlined over the next couple of years. Otherwise, you're just wasting the great years of McDavid and Draisaitl.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I love Peter's suggestion of just folding the franchise. Laugh.
I know that's dire, Kevin.
Yeah, I like that. It's funny, but coming out of Peter's mouth, it's just totally hilarious. If you said that, Mike, I'd just roll my eyes. But it was just hilarious coming out of Peter. Anyway, I think these kind of situations, it's not one size fits all. Like it doesn't, you can't follow the Toronto model, because they were able to strip that down to the chassis. You can't do that at Edmonton, because you have two great players in Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, and you wouldn't want to do that. And, you you have a guy like Nugent Hopkins who can play. He's a legitimate NHL player, and I don't think it benefits the team to trade him away. So you keep him. What I would do if I was the new GM is I'd go in, and just as Mike said, they have so many bad contracts. I'd get rid of those. That's my rebuild. And I promote Bouchard next season. I put him on defense. I decide which of these two of these six defensemen I'm going to keep, and I start from there. And then I let the chips fall where they may. But I just don't think you can go in there and embrace, okay, we're going to do a complete rewrite of this program, not with the people they have there. Because I agree, Mike, you're right. You waste their years. So I think you got to try to do the kind of change on the fly, but more aggressively. Like, you can't just tinker. You got to go in and, as you said, get rid of those contracts. And I think that that's crucial. And you bring in all the young guys and try to build that way. But it's that's much harder to do it that way. But I think it's possible because of the players they have. And you know what? They might be able to attract like a free agent or two simply because they want to play with Connor McDavid. So
that's true. Basically, when I was talking about bringing up Bakersfield, The Sabres did it out of the lockout. They brought up a line from Rochester. I think if you did that from Bakersfield and you said, this is our third line, we're not touching it. These guys have chemistry. They'll find the chemistry here. I think that would solve some problems for them. I really do.
Yeah, I would go for that. I like that idea.
And just symbolic of, sort of the dysfunction that has happened this year. They made a trade with Chicago, Drake Caggiula for Brandon Manning. Caggiula's out with a concussion right now, but when he was playing with the Hawks, he was playing very well. Brandon Manning was a healthy scratch in Bakersfield in the last AHL game, and he's got another year at over $2 million, and they've got another year, Sam Gagner, at over $3 million. Now he can be a contributor, but that was the better half of the Ryan Spooner deal for them. That's what I mean. You've got dead money on their cap, and if they are going to be able to attract free agents, they need as much flexibility on the cap to be able to take advantage of players wanting to go there. The other game, and we'll touch a little bit on the Rangers and Canucks, but the other game, which I watched from beginning to end, in spite of the horror at the beginning of it, was the Leafs and the Hawks. And there should be a lot of concern in Toronto right now. I'm going to write something a little later on for Hockey Buzz about the Leafs, about their Jekyll and Hyde nature, especially at the beginning of games, Kev. Last night they fell behind 5-0, came back and got to within 5-4 and almost tied the game late in regulation. But they were booed off the ice after the first period, allowing 4 goals to the Hawks. They were not in it at all. Freddie Anderson was chased for the second game in a row. I mean, it's not just it was lethargic. It was not just they were being outskated or out hustled by a team that was playing better. The Leafs, for the second game in a row, came out comatose and did not start playing, and this was admitted by Austin Matthews and a couple other players after the game, did not start playing until the second period. And this has been a trend all year, slow starts, and they make up with it with their powerhouse offense. But the problem is, when you get to the playoffs, you can't do that. That's a losing formula.
Yeah, that is. And I wonder if this has become a greater problem even than their defensive deficiencies. Because, what makes the Leafs dangerous is their offense, and it just didn't get going. It hasn't gotten going in the early going, and now that's become, if effort, whenever you see effort becoming a problem, that's the greatest problem of all, and that's what it seems like. They didn't even the last 2 games. They just looked ridiculous, and against
there's no defense. The goalie is just hung out to dry.
Well, I saw someone on Twitter pointed this out. What's more distressing is it was in 2 different kinds of teams. One great team in the Tampa Bay Lightning and another team that isn't even in the playoffs, and yet they couldn't rise up for either team. And
granted that they have injuries right now, and there's some flu going on through the locker room. That happens during the year. But when your fourth line, which has been a problem for most of the year, and they've been shuffling players in and out, when it goes -3 in 7 minutes of ice time for the entire game, and was on the ice for the winning goal, that's a problem. Your veteran on your top defensive pair, Ron Hainsey, was -3 and completely schooled on a couple plays. The thing is, it's tough to unbury yourself, Peter, when you're down 5-0. I almost don't care about the rally in the third period and them showing, the fortitude to come back and, the part of the game that you have to focus on if you're from a Leaf perspective is you got down 5-0 to the Hawks and showed no pulse until it was to the point of almost embarrassment.
Score took over.
Right. Until Colin Delia had to come into the game because Corey Crawford had the flu, and Colin Delia looked like he should be playing in Rockford right now, and they scored goals on him.
Yeah.
The Leafs had 30 shots in the third period. That's all fine and good, but you're down 5-0. So it sort of minimizes.
Corey Crawford's in net, and how many goals did they score in the third? All of them? All 4?
They scored 3 of the 4.
3 of the 4. So Crawford's in net. Maybe they score 1 out of 3. Maybe. Right? Who knows? Yeah. There's times like this where teams just come out flat. And I guess if they hadn't been taken to the woodshed by Tampa Bay, you Leafs fans would probably say, okay, it's just one of those nights. The reason why I think you can still say it's one of those nights is Tampa Bay takes everyone to the woodshed. It's not a fair measuring stick right now.
Sure.
They're that good. And so you sort of have to throw that one away. That's your toss away. Okay. You tried, it didn't work. That's Tampa Bay. Now you come to Chicago. Here's the other reason I don't think you panic. Chicago's actually good. They're playing pretty good hockey. And, you know, the demise of Jonathan Toews has certainly been exaggerated.
Sure.
Patrick Kane is second in the NHL in scoring the last time I checked. And Stan Bowen seems to be scooping up these players from every other idiot GM out there who can't seem to hold on to them, and realizing he's got enough good quality around them and people in that organization that he's finding value. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask Russ about this. And Alex DeBrincat scores his 38th goal of the year yesterday.
Yeah.
Russ. And of course, I was having a little bit of a back and forth, and not of any kind of mean-spirited nature, but you know, Igor Korshkov's name has come up, the Russian kid who was drafted at the first pick in the 2016 draft. And if you remember, it was the first pick that was on the Saturday. They had an entire overnight to decide who they were going to pick, and you and I were talking about DeBrincat before in the first round, didn't get picked.
Yep.
Carter Hart was there. Taylor Radish was there. A number of Sam Girard was there. Yep. And they take an obscure 19-year-old big Russian who had a big World Junior. And I mean, we'll never know what Mark Hunter was thinking at that point, but he knew who Alex DeBrincat was. He knew he was a 50-goal scorer in the OHL. And I look at what he's doing for Chicago, along with his junior line mate Dylan Strome, who they got in a deal with Arizona. And I'm like, Stan Bowman, for all of his foibles, for all of his faults over the last couple of years, for signing Brent Seabrook, for all of the problems that the Hawks are having, he's turned them around because of one draft pick and one pretty good trade. Yeah,
there's no question. I mean, even John Chaika was asked on the midday show today what was wrong with Strome, and he couldn't answer it. And I don't think there was anything wrong with Strome. I think Strome just needed to gain confidence and just he basically just needed to play with somebody for a long period of time that he could gain some continuity with, and he had instant continuity with DeBrincat from before, and it worked. What Arizona maybe should have done was brought somebody in that was used to playing with Strome to try and do that, and Chaika never did that. That's probably something that, you know, if you got him by himself off the record, he might admit to. Look, the other thing, one second, about the Leafs is the most distressing thing for me about the Leafs is, and this is why I can't make Morgan Riley captain, the last two games, a 21-year-old Austin Matthews has to basically come out and tell the media that his team's not showing up to work.
Right.
And that's embarrassing for the coach. That's embarrassing for veterans on that team. The fact that he has to do it at the age of 21 is pretty bad.
Yeah, but you know what, and Kevin, you can attest to this. Austin Matthews, I mean, I don't think they have to groom him to be a future captain. I think he is basically a natural leader, and he is taking it upon himself, as Russ said, especially on Monday. He said, you know, we quit. Yeah. And, you know, Austin Matthews can say that because he hasn't quit. I mean, he's struggled. He's had some injury problems, but he was the best Leaf on the ice yesterday. He just needs his teammates to come around and do the same damn thing.
Yeah, and I think it's been part of his DNA for a long time that, you know, and the expectation. I think people, when he was anointed as the next great offensive player coming up, I think he also was anointed as a guy that was going to be able to carry a team, and I think he's just taken it upon himself. I remember I end up going every year to the U.S. National Development Program, and I'm part of a media group that does media training with the players. We come in and we give them sort of a taste of what it's like to be interviewed. And, you know, when he was 16, he was terrible. Just a terrible interview. I did the interview with him. He struggled, and he's just come so far. And I think a lot of that is the fact that he's been prepared. He's been prepared to realize that, part of being a star at the NHL level is doing exactly what he's doing, which is to rise up in the dressing room. I'm not surprised that he's doing that on and off the ice.
Yeah, and he was a little like I covered the Leafs at the first rookie development camp after he was drafted, and he was still a little rough around the edges in terms of handling the media. He's gotten very good at it. He has to. In Toronto, you deal with them every day, and I think he will be captain eventually. And if not, maybe they just go without a captain. And some people think that that's meaningless. I think a team needs a leader. And I think Matthews can be that, but I just right now I know that Babcock is taking a lot of hits right now because of how he's handled lines and things of that nature. And I have to say this because I was subject to watching the broadcast on NBCSN, and I love Doc Emmerich, but when that game was getting down 4-0, 5-0, Jeremy Roenick's going down the Mitch Marner offer sheet. And it's like, okay, can you please be prepared to talk about something other than, pie in the sky crap that's probably not happening, because that's not happening. It's the Leafs will try their damnedest to make sure that he doesn't go anywhere.
They would match any offer, and they would trade somebody else the same way Nashville did. It wouldn't even be a question.
Yeah, I know there's going to be. I know more than likely with the pool of restricted free agents that is going to be out there next summer, Kev, we know that there's going to be one or two. I seriously doubt that Mitch Marner will be one of them. Would he attract the attention of other teams? Sure. But the Leafs are going to pay him. And he's from Toronto, and he's a lifelong Maple Leaf fan. Now, if they lowball him, then I'm sure, he'll explore his options. But I don't think Kyle Dubas is going to lowball Mitch Marner.
Yeah, I don't know that there's going to be one or two offer sheets. I just think, is it more likely or more possible than it's been in the past? Yes, because there's a lot of them. But the one thing that's always lost about offer sheets, and I got this from a general manager years ago, and I always pass it along. And usually when I send it off to like a reader, they go, "Yeah, I never thought about that." In order to make a offer that another team won't want to match, you got to totally disrupt your own salary structure in order to do that.
Right.
Not only do you make an onerous on them to match, but you make an onerous on you if they don't match. And it's totally disruptive. If you offer someone and you pay them more than it's worth, the players on your team, there's rebellion. They want more now. If you're going to pay him that, so the system is not a good fit for getting players to move.
Right.
And then there's the other thing is, and Russ is right on, Toronto's just going to match, and Marner isn't the guy they would lose. They would
probably trade Nylander or move somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They would move some other guy. So, and most, it's like David Poyle matched, and in Nashville, because once you don't match, then you're opening yourself up to be a victim and all that. So I'm not sure that there's going to be any. There might be. Who knows? Tampa looks pretty vulnerable too, because they've got a lot of guys tied up. But what are you going to do? Offer Braden Point $10 million? Is that your plan?
Right. That's a bad plan. If that is.
So because that's a big thing. I live in Michigan, and I've heard that over from fans. What? Yeah, they should just go out and offer Braden, Point $10 million, and they're not going to be able to match. They're not going to be able to deal with that. Yeah, well, then you're going to go in and tell Dylan Larkin, yeah, by the way, we gave you that short-term deal, and but we're bringing Braden Point in for. And I know it's your team, Dylan, but I hope you understand. Nah, it doesn't work like that.
You know what, fans of Michigan, listen to Hockey Prospect Radio in a couple of weeks. We had Tyler on, and we went through just how the Red Wings youngsters are developing and how many there are. And you know what? It's a nice little pool they have going there, especially from last year's draft.
Yeah, Valeno was a great pick at the end of the first round.
Tremendous pick.
It'd be interesting. What did Wright have to say about whether Veleno is going to be an offensive contributor or not? I mean,
I think he thinks he's going to be. They're trying to round out his game, but they know he can contribute offensively, and he's a big, strong kid. Yeah. They want to round out his game. That's what I took out of that.
Well, I mean, that's the big, question, and in the Detroit area, and I've heard that from a lot of people within the organization is how much will he score? Like, they know he's a good hockey player.
No, I think if you bring him up eventually to the NHL level, I think he'll be a 45, 50-point guy. I do. But I think he has to get strong on the other part of his game to do it. Remember, Mantha, when he came up, he had no idea how to play defense. None. Yeah. And now look at the player he is.
And what I found interesting watching one of the Detroit games recently is that they have moved Athanasiou to the middle. So they have Larkin at one center position and Athanasiou at another. And, I mean, I've always liked him in terms of his skill set because he's one of the fastest guys in the league. Sometimes I question his ability to finish, but with that kind of speed and him and Larkin, that's a 1-2 that might be really good in a year or two. Well, I mean, I think it's good now.
That's what they're focusing on is speed. And Zadine is fast, and like you said, those guys are fast, and Veleno is fast, and so they've been drafting speed for 2 or 3 years now, and it's eventually going to show. And when it shows, it's going to show very well for them. It will.
Yeah. All right, let's touch on the one other game, and this game wasn't notable for playoff ramifications, but for extracurricular activities. Now, Russ, I watched the Roussel Brendan Lemieux collision or connect, whatever. I didn't see a butt end and I didn't see a headbutt because he was, but that's what they said was he got the 5 in the game for was headbutting.
Yeah, they went for the reputation on that, but what was happening was he was already falling into Lemieux. Lemieux definitely pushed him. Don't get me wrong, but the guy was already falling. Like he was in a bad position already. There was no way Lemieux could have done anything about it. The call was ridiculous. Nobody could understand that call. Like you wouldn't even see that call in a peewee or a midget game, honestly.
Yeah, and let me just say, if he actually had headbutted a Roussel, he would have received as many bouquets of flowers and candies from other NHL players than at any time in history, because Roussel is widely hated as a premier rat in the league. The other one, and I'm not as concerned with the incident. Now, Chris Kreider got a $5,000 fine for elbowing Pettersson. But I'm concerned about the fact that Pettersson, what is this, the 4th or 5th time he's been injured this year? I mean, he's going to win.
Back out at the end of the period, he was back out on the bench. The worry I have is that when you have a great player in the league now, is this the answer? You target him? Is that just, because I've heard you talk about it, Mike, kidding around, but this is like the 4th time he's been targeted. And look, Chris Kreider is ridiculously strong. We've talked about it on this show. You saw the follow-through to make sure that he connected. And he did. He made sure he connected to the point where he was bloodied. And then so Kreider, got what he got. He probably should have gotten at least a game suspension. A $5,000 fine for an elbow is not really a deterrent, especially when this kid is going to be one of the stars in your league. Like basically what this fine tells me is if you're a young kid in this league, you better wear like a college mask, because everybody's going to be gunning for you if you could score 40 goals. Now,
Kev, I know I'm going back to my youth and my sort of old hockey or old world mentality here, but I know that Sidney Crosby, when Ryan Reeves was in Pittsburgh, said he had played with the most comfort that he had in his entire career. All of a sudden, like recently, Ken Hitchcock has been playing Zach Kassian with Connor McDavid. Now, Kassian isn't a finisher, but he is a big guy and he is a deterrent. Are we getting back to the days of Dave Semenko playing with Gretzky?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think so, but I've noted that too, that there seems to be a lot more talk about protecting guys than we've had in the past. And, I don't think we'll ever go back to the days of the 4-minute enforcer, but, will we have guys that, maybe we're headed in that direction. So I guess a lot will depend as we move forward. I wanted to bring up too before I forget. I want to get Mike's take on it. What's your thought on, we've seen some top players now getting suspensions. And I know that's always been your pet peeve about that. And now Jack Eichel, obviously, got a 2-game suspension. And we've had other stars as well.
I'm pleased in the sense that I think that it's reflecting maybe an equaling of the playing field, and a little bit less of the star treatment. Now, we've seen Malkin do something this year, and if he had connected on that wild swing, would he have been suspended as much as somebody like Tom Wilson? Probably not. I still think that there is a scale in terms of the star player as compared to a player who has a record, and the star player may get I mean, I don't think Eichel should have gotten any more than 2 games. I don't think that Voracek should have. I don't know if Voracek should have been suspended at all. Maybe Gary Bettman upheld
one game. I felt like 1 game he should have gotten.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not completely getting away with it. But like, I've seen Alex Ovechkin do things where I think he should have been suspended for 5 games, and he didn't even get fined.
Wait, a $5,000 fine is getting away with it in my book.
Yeah, look, hold on. Let's back up here. Whether it's you got to see the forest from the trees. And to the point that we were making of having this old school way where you got to have someone ride with you on the wing to keep players safe. This doesn't need to happen if the NHL enforces rules and refs call penalties.
Right.
The officiating in the NHL isn't just abysmal. It's beyond it's beyond atrocious. These are guys who are literally, you remember in the original Star Wars when Obi-Wan Kenobi is trying to teach Luke Skywalker about the Force, and he gives him a lightsaber, and he puts on this blind mask.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the NHL refs are using when they're out there. They're not only missing things, they're missing things in front of their face, and they don't care. There is no accountability. And one of the all-time worst refs, Stephen Walcom, has a level of authority over this Gong Show that, and don't even debate me on Walcom. Walcom was awful. I don't want to hear it. Don't at me. Don't. He was awful. And it trickles up to the Department of Player Safety. The problem is, why you can't argue this is because there's no evidence that says they get it right. The evidence of getting it right is so infrequent as opposed to the evidence that they get it wrong. And this is why you have these problems. The NHL has no reason to correct itself because there's no one in there who actually understands what the problem is. Like, they're the Edmonton Oilers of league commissions. Like, it's brutal. And this is why.
I'm not going to take Peter on that one. I want to sort of ask Kevin this, because I said this yesterday and I thought it was laughable. The appeal of the suspension of Voracek that goes to Gary Bettman. What were the odds of him changing the ruling? Because I thought it was about 1,000,000,000 to 1. There's no way he's going to cross, and not because he's afraid of George Peros, but there's no way he's going to cross his own Department of Player Safety when they've determined it's a suspension and say, oh, I think it's less. I'll give him a game.
Yeah, it's happened. I mean, obviously we know that he has changed it in the past, but I agree with you. Like, I thought that whole system is always flawed. Like, the appellate should not be to the guy that basically signs, Peros' check. Like that.
Justice Roberts.
Yeah, like, it's just absurd that is the situation. I'm surprised that has been allowed, under the CBA. You got to think that will change next time. There should be some, neutral party that reviews these. They do for everything else. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised at that, to be honest.
I think, Kev, the reason they don't have that is because there are no real, true written guidelines. Again, when these things occur and we see the explanations are not consistent with the same kind of hits that we see. And so that's just like, they need a standardization of what these infractions are, and then you could have a third party do it. Right now, I don't think a third party would take it on.
One of the things that you deal with organizations is you deal with things like policies, processes, procedures. Your policy is your 30,000-foot view. The policy of the Department of Player Safety is we aim to create a safe environment for our players to play without injury and blah, 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 care of their well-being and health. That's what governs you. So that gives you the insight as to how you can look at things. So that's fine. Now, what do you do on a granular level? Well, they have no granular level. Oh, let's go look at the rule book. Well, the rule book says if you've got half a second between contact, it's made up of, and guess, and look at the retreads the NHL has run through their front office to do this stuff. And George Peros, there's a upstanding man, you know. I mean, like, come on, what's his, like, look at the track record. So would you, like, let's phrase it another way. George Peros is retired from the NHL. Look at what he did as his job. Look at what he did. You know what, George, you know what I think you're really qualified to do? You're qualified to be a police officer. That's what you're qualified to do. That's essentially what they just hired him to do, to be the commissioner of the NHL police on player safety. Yet he was a guy whose job was to make things unsafe. It's completely moronic.
Right. I always say they should have a Lady Bing guy in there instead of the enforcer in there.
Well, that's been the trend of the Department of Player Safety. And Brendan Shanahan, Brian Burke was a former minor league enforcer. Stefan Quintal wasn't exactly a wilting flower. So, you know, I mean, I think what they're thinking is that these guys, they know where the rules have been are broken because they've broken them.
Right. They're thinking like this is when the FBI hires a hacker to fix a problem or, you know, to hack another government. Right. But for this, it's not working.
You know who you hired for this? You hire Paul Correa. That's who you hire.
Right.
Like you hire someone who's been a victim of these brainless assaults and stuff.
Hire Pat LaFontaine, somebody like that. I'm always busy with the arena, but you know what I'm saying. A guy like that.
When Peros was hired, there was somebody who was in the mix that was more of a skill guy and not a former enforcer or a former aggressive guy. So, you know, it was thought that way.
I just want there to be guidelines. As a media member, I want to be able to look at those guidelines, look at the hit, and be able to write about, hey, this is what I expect will happen. Because every time we guess what's going to happen, we're wrong because they don't know what's going to happen.
You know what the true mark of a poor organization is? One that won't put anything in writing. Because then it's really hard to challenge you on it.
Right. They're going by the rule book, which again, the rule book needs updating.
Oh, the rule book, whatever. The rule book is basically like it's a suggestions on how maybe you could enforce the flow of the game if you were to take off your Obi-Wan Kenobi helmet. Like it's unreal.
I mean, just remember, like the NFL rules have gotten so bad to the point that it's impossible to fumble in the end zone.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen in hockey either.
No, but they're inching towards it, Russ.
I was gonna bring that up in terms of like defining illegality. I mean, basically, remember Goodell, until the Ray Rice situation, there was no guidelines in terms of suspensions for certain things, and they said that he was sort of biased in one way or the other, and they almost took away the suspension power from their own commissioner because of how badly it was handled. So, I mean, until something like that happens in the NHL, you're probably going to have Gary Bettman ruling with an iron fist. Now, Ross, you wanted to bring up something? In the chat of the
Oh, well, I mean, Guy Latouche brought up he wanted to hear Peter's take on the Sharks-Jets game from Tuesday. Would love that matchup as a WCF. I don't know what WCF means, but
Western Conference Final. Okay. Entertaining game. And this is the second time the Sharks have come in under 10 seconds and stolen a tie or you know,
stolen a point.
Jets.
Yeah. I was thinking of you, Peter, when I saw Nick Ehlers walk over the blue line and throw that cross ice pass, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
I'm literally, I actually couldn't. I was kind of busy yesterday, and I didn't want to make time because I was super angry about things in this, and I'm writing about this right now. There was so much wrong in the last 15 seconds for the Jets that you don't even know where to place it all, because it wasn't like everything that can go wrong will go wrong. It was everything you can do wrong, you did wrong. And what the most stunning thing about it, in my opinion, is Paul Maurice in his post-game comment said, well, there were 5 guys on the ice. They should be able to figure out that play. That's all he had to say. Actually, Paul, it's a lot more complex than that, because it speaks volumes to what's gone wrong with the Jets since Christmas, which is that they're barely averaging a point per game in games played. Their record since Christmas is atrocious, and they're inching back to exactly what Paul Maurice has been his entire career, a 500 coach. And he is literally coaching this team into mediocrity. Scheifele has scored 2 power play goals in the last 37 games. Jacob Trouba has been terrible. And then Ehlers with that cross ice pass has been, it was, what were you thinking? But if you look at it, where's Myers on that play? He's actually down low. So he's left the forward up, covering the point, which is Connor. Well, if anyone who's seen Kyle Connor play defense, it was brutal. And on a 2-on-1, what not only so Kulikov's hustling his butt back, and that's its own issue altogether, is why you have Kulikov and Myers out there in the last minute, the last 20 seconds of the game. And Connor, with a guy in front of him, you know what he does? I've seen the freeze frame. He actually lets up and turns around and looks behind him. The puck and the player are in front of him, and which is Pavelski, who scores his 37th of the year to win with 3.6 seconds left. It was the most stunning display of everything wrong that could go wrong. And they chose to go wrong. And this is what's going on with the Jets, and why in a 7-game series against the Sharks, sure, if they can even get to the Western Conference Final, that'd be amazing. But the Sharks are winning that in 5 games if the Jets get lucky. That's how bad they're playing.
I think the series that I'm looking forward to in the West that I hope happens is Calgary-Vegas.
Yeah.
Because Matthew Tkachuk, the thing that happened in the last Calgary-Vegas game with Matthew Tkachuk, with Marc-Andre Fleury, with Ryan Reeves, that is going to be a bloodbath. I mean, they're two good teams. And, you know, I think, you know, as I've said before, I think
the goaltending battle, that's the problem.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think Vegas has the advantage because they have Fleury, and I still don't have any confidence in Rittich and Smith to win that series. But I mean, I think it'll be a bloodbath. It'll be great. It'll be really.
By the way, Fleury sent a video message to Evgeny Malkin for his 1,000th point, and said he doesn't understand how he got to 1,000 points. He never shot on practice. He never scored on them in practice. He doesn't know where the scoring came from.
And you're not one of the top 100 of all time.
Yeah. It was really funny, though. It was good.
Some news and notes, and if we have a question or two in the chat, we'll answer those before we end the show. Kevin had to drop off. He had an interview to take care of. So decided to move to April 9th. That is Tuesday. That is the day before the beginning of the playoffs. Russ, from my memory, they did it around the middle of the first round, or
broke up. I couldn't hear it.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The draft lottery was moved up to April 9th, the Tuesday before the first round of the playoffs. And from my memory, they did the draft lottery in the middle of the first round, or like after the first round of the playoffs. So they just moved it up.
I thought it was just before it began, like the day before.
No. I know for a fact that it was like April 18th or something like that.
I do like the fact that it's before the playoffs. I do.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of fans of teams that aren't in the playoffs, and at least, maybe you're right. Maybe it was like in the middle of the playoffs or something. But you know what? Your season's over. Give me something to look forward to, and now I can go ahead and start looking forward to the draft, because I'm still going to watch the playoffs if I'm a fan of the NHL, but this is like your last chance to engage, a Philadelphia Flyers fan before they decide they might shut their TV off until June.
Plus, I think it gives the teams that are in the lottery, they'll know for sure where they're drafting earlier than before, so they can maybe, if there's any formulation of a plan, they have an extra couple weeks to say, okay, we're drafting 6th, so this is where we have to concentrate on. So I think that's good. We mentioned yesterday the injury to Thomas Chabot, who is probably out for the rest of the season. Well, the Ottawa Senators are announced this morning they are planning to call up Eric Brandstrom, and he will play in his first NHL game, the next game that the Ottawa plays. I think it's tonight or tomorrow. Russ, he's had a good year in the American Hockey League. I think he's going to be on the Senators next year. they're not going to burn a year of his entry level by playing him 10 games. So what do you think of this?
No, I think it's good. Let him get marketed to the fans now. Let him get that taste that he's been waiting for. And then send him back down and, let him play 4 or 5 games. That's fine. And then send him back down and wait till next year. But he's going to be a big part of the team. And don't put him up on the top pairing right away. Work him in slow.
Right.
No, I'm all for this. I think this is a great thing for Branstrom.
I saw this little note that Alex Ovechkin mentioned. He was talking. I don't know who he is being interviewed by, but he was talking about that he's only played for 2 teams in his life: Moscow Dynamo and the Caps. And he says, I don't like to change teams much. Meaning, because they were asking him about a new contract. His contract is up after the 2021 season. So he's got 2 more years. He's at 653 career goals. And, he's 240 behind Gretzky. So some people think he's the only one who has a chance to catch him. That would mean scoring at the rate of 50 goals in the next 5 seasons, which he's not going to. But he could score 30 to 35, and if he stuck around until he was in his late 30s, he might be able to break Gretzky's record. But the question is whether that means enough to him to stay around in the NHL another 4 or 5 years. I mean, Peter, he's won his cup. I don't know whether this is going to be like sort of a Pavel Datsyuk thing where, he's going to go back and play in Russia for the last couple of years.
I wonder if he would. Maybe he would. He seems to be very pro-Russia and sort of his personal views and stuff. I think one thing that, you can debate it all you want, but when you look at the NHL today and then you look at what Gretzky and Lemieux did, it's pretty hard to argue that Alex Ovechkin isn't in that pantheon of the top 3 greatest goal scorers of all time. I think you'd be very naive in thinking what he's done in this day and age in the NHL isn't equivalent to what Gretzky was doing. They're 2 different worlds, and Ovechkin has excelled in a way that is quite incredible. So, he's cemented his legacy, as far as I'm concerned, in the hockey greats when it comes to what he does well as a hockey player. What he certainly, I don't think Ovechkin's driven for things like records. I think he's driven for things like success. He's found success with a cup, and if there was opportunities to keep winning, I think he'd like to do that. And if he scores a bucket load of goals along the way, that's fine. But I don't, if that becomes unattainable for him in Washington, he'll probably make a decision like Datsyuk of whether he wants to keep playing in that organization or go back and just enjoy some things in life. And I think we all know that Ovechkin does have a lust for life. He also has a very strong appreciation for his home country. So to your point, Mike, he could pull a Datsyuk, but I think for different reasons, maybe. But given his friendship and understanding with Ted Leonis and stuff, I could see him being a Capital for life as long as Ted wants to pay him and as long as it makes sense for him to be there too. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2 years.
Okay, we'll take 1 or 2 questions from the chat, but let me just finish on this. I just saw this from Arthur Staple, who wrote an article in The Athletic talking about the potential availability of Nick Leddy over the summer based on the fact that the Islanders, what he calls, has a core 4 of young defensemen, referring to Ryan Pulock, Adam Pelech, Devin Taves, and Scott Mayfield. I haven't watched the Islanders as much as I watch other teams, so I think Pulock is a really good defenseman with a great shot.
Yeah.
I know Taves has made a lot of strides this year. I'm not that impressed with Pelech and with Mayfield. I think they're
Mayfield did really well. Actually, I think Mayfield had a heck of a season, to be honest.
But I think more than anything, and I don't think it's going to be possible for them to find somebody to take Johnny Boychuk's contract because I think he's 3 years for another $6 million. But Leddy is still he's an innings eater. He's a minutes eater, and he can still generate offense. So for a lot of teams starve for blue line help, I think they could move him. And if they're looking,
I don't know why they would.
I don't know why they would. True, that's the thing. But if they think that they have enough there, plus with Noah Dobson coming along, maybe in the next year or two, maybe they think they can afford to jettison Letty and in favor of using his money to spend on guys like Barzal and Andres Lee.
Spend on top of that anyhow. They have loads of money. They don't need to move Nick Letty to move a contract. I wouldn't do it. I really wouldn't.
Okay.
So,
yeah, chat.
So here's a good question. It comes from Adam. He said, with the addition of Brandon Montour to Risto and Darlene, how does Buffalo's defense project for next year? Again, I would buy out Bogosian.
Yeah, and I checked into this. Bogosian's buyout would be a little less than $2 million on the cap next year and $2 million the year after that. So you open up almost $4 million in cap space for next year, and all you're doing is spreading the cap hit out an extra year, which they're going to have players like Connor Sheary and Sobotka dropping off after next year. So it's worth it to do that.
I would do that, and then even though Scandella's had a horrible year, I would let Scandella, Hunwick, Palute, and I would bring up Will Borgen and let them rotate around those other positions. And at least you'll get more speed, more youth, more of everything. Yes, there'll still be some issues, but you won't have a guy who literally can't move from one side of the net to the other like Bogosian.
Yeah, I mean, I think their top four should be Dahlin, Ristolainen, McCabe, and Montour. And then you can fill in on the 5, 6, 7. But where the Sabres really need to concentrate is, other than Eichel, Skinner, and Reinhart, who is scoring? Not many people. I think they need to. Well,
they could bring over Marcus Davidson, and I would do it.
And they have Victor Olofsson down in Rochester, but I'm talking about you're opening up over $10 million in cap space just with the expiring contracts of Pominville and Molson, and you maybe need to spend most of that to sign Skinner, but you need to get some secondary offense in there either via trade or free agency.
I mean, again, Davidson over in Djurgården is 27 points in 51 games, and he's 20 years old. That's really good. I'd bring him over and I'd see what I could get. Maybe Asplund comes up and you get a little bit of offense out of him.
Yeah, he's been okay with Rochester in terms of points. They've called up Alex Nylander.
That's the other option.
Yeah, so I mean, but they've got so many Sobotkas, Johan Larssons, Zemgus Girgensons. They have to really, if they can't improve on what they are, you have to find a way to clear them out.
Well, you would hope that Rodriguez would move out of the 2C, Middlestat would at least be the 1 or the 2C, and then
Rodriguez has been one of the success stories,
right? But I still don't want him on the second line.
No, he'd be great in the 3rd or the 4th line,
right? If you could do that, then your team's gotten better. I guess that's my point.
Right.
All right. Let's see.
1 or 2 more. 1 or 2 more.
1 or 2 more.
Tomorrow we'll be doing the show probably at 1. I will be up in Toronto covering the Leafs and Flyers game. It's possible that we may not do a show, but we'll keep you abreast of that via Twitter during the morning.
I don't see another question.
Okay. All right. We'll finish there then.
Yeah.
Okay. For Kevin Allen, for Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.